Genesis chapter 6 through 9, the sky is falling. Who here ever went to Sunday school growing up? Do you remember? Or as a grown-up even? Who here's heard the story of Noah's Ark? Now when I had it, they put this felt stuff on a board and all the things. It's this cute picture. What I'd like you to do, if it's possible, is forget everything you know, and let's try to look at it through fresh eyes as best we can, because sometimes we have all of this experience and these assumptions from this story, and the story kind of tells a bit of a different story than the one we like to tell the kids. So we're going to jump right into the background. Genesis is the first book of the Bible. It means the beginning, and it tells a story that all fits together. We've already talked about how it's believed that Moses will be the one who writes Genesis. So in some ways, this is a reflection on what has happened in the Exodus story. These people who've been called out, freed from being slaves, how did we end up here? This is a story written in the ancient Near East, using a different type of language than we're used to, using different type of imagery than we're used to. A reminder that the Bible is written for us. It was not written to us. So we have to do our best to understand the context of everything that's going on, because their context and what they're interested in is very, very different than maybe what we would expect. Okay, now a quick overview. In Genesis 1, we have all of creation being made, this great cosmic temple. Genesis 2 focuses in on humanity, humankind, how that ends up being created. Genesis 3, we see what's sometimes referred to as this fall, the fall into sin, sinfully seizing that which God had told them not to take. And from there, we start to see what happens. As humankind is banished, this Adam and Eve, this human and life, are banished. They continue to leave Eden and go further and further east. And this is one of the themes through Genesis. They'll keep talking about going further east, away from Eden. As they're outside of Eden, we see sin and violence increase. We see the children of Adam and Eve. One goes and kills the other one. This spiral continues to go out of control. Now in Genesis 4, I'm just going to note this passage here, verses 23 and 24. It says, Lamech said to his wives, Adam and Zillah, listen to me, wives of Lamech, hear my words. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for injuring me. If Cain is avenged 7 times, then Lamech is avenged 77 times. Or the Hebrew here suggests 70 times 7. So we have this person Lamech, this child following in the line of Cain, and he is a violent person. There's a bit of a warlord nature to him. He has multiple wives. It seems to suggest he has these slave wives that he's collected. The violence that starts with Cain is now magnifying and multiplying. The end of Genesis 4 through to Genesis 5 tells these genealogies that we won't go through, because while I love genealogies, it can be a bit confusing. If you have read ahead, and if you read all through the section, it's a little confusing, because a lot of the names end up being the same through 2 different lines. So what we have is the line that goes kind of in the faithfulness from Eve, this faithful line that will go through. And then we have this other one that goes through Cain, who's given in and following that line, almost like the serpent of the taking and the violence. And for whatever reason, names like Enoch and Lamech, and a lot of these end up being very similar as well. It's like they hadn't discovered new names yet, is what it feels like. But if you were to read it really quickly, you would be forgiven for being confused, because Lamech will later be listed as the father of Noah, but that's different than this Lamech. Right. It's confusing. Which brings us to today's chapter in Genesis 6. Now, right at the beginning, which we didn't read, it talks about a very strange section, and maybe someday we'll have time to look through it in great detail, but it talks about these heroes of old, these kind of kings of old, And what it's meant to do is it's explaining how the surrounding nations have these stories of these great kings, and it's kind of pointing out that these are coming from almost demonic background. And then it goes to verse 5. The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. All right, well, that sounds bad. Only evil all the time. So we see that the hearts of people have now shifted to this place where everyone seems to just be selfish, evil, looking out for themselves. Verse 6, the Lord regretted that he had made human beings on the earth, on the land, and his heart was deeply troubled. So I think when I used to read this, I would see this as God kind of being angry and vengeful, but the story talks about God as being heartbroken, regretting what has become of this good creation, of these people that were meant to be God's image bearers, and how that violence continues to increase. So the Lord said, I will wipe from the face of the earth the human race I have created, and with them the animals, the birds, and the creatures that move along the ground, for I regret that I have made them. In Genesis, we see God creating this cosmic temple and then filling it. It starts at this point of this chaotic waters, and then God goes and brings this chaos into this creative goodness. So now God is looking at unfilling the land, unordering things, maybe even using the chaos to restart everything. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. This is the account of Noah and his family. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God. Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. All right, so hopeless situation, everybody's hearts, everybody's bad all the time, very bad, but this hope in this other person, this person who is righteous, that means is embodying God's justice. And it says that Noah is walking with God. That's imagery back to the garden. When God goes, where are you? Where have you been? Because God, now we have someone walking and showing this new hope of living a different way. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight. It was full of violence. God saw how corrupt the earth had become, for all the people on earth had corrupted their ways. All right, so it's really piling on. Evil heart, corrupt, and that's what we see. We see this continuation of a civilization as they come together. It keeps becoming more and more corrupt together, more and more oppressive, more and more taking things a whole new direction than what God has intended. And it's not just that there's corruption everywhere, it's that the people themselves are increasing the corruption of all of creation. The people are the ones doing this corrupting and making things continually worse, increasing in violence. So God said to Noah, I'm going to put an end to all people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I'm surely going to destroy both them and the earth. Okay, this is not a righteous vengeance still. This is a heartbroken, fair assessment. God has seen what has happened, and God is assessing this and like, I don't know what else to do. We need to start over. How do we turn back from this direction? We're going to have to destroy what was there and build something new. And God says, so make yourself an ark. And then he gives the instructions on that. He says, I'm going to bring floodwaters on the earth and destroy all life under the heavens, but I will establish my covenant with you. You are to bring into the ark 2 of all living creatures, male and female, to keep them alive with you. All right, now we're at the children's song, to build an arky. The Lord told Noah, if you need a boat to go out on the water, I know a guy. Terrible joke. Thank you for not responding. So this faithful person, you've got to go and build this thing that you don't even know what it's going to be used for. You can't even imagine what's happening. Here's what you need to do. And God talks about there being a covenant. Covenant is a word maybe that we're not always familiar with, but it is incredibly important through the Old Testament. Covenant is this agreement together, this working together. It's how God partners with God's creation and God's people. So he's making this deal with Noah. We're going to start this new thing together, and we'll both be faithful to this new arrangement. And it's implying here as well that we're seeing new creation. What was corrupt and bad, God is going to go and restart over, to renew and start again to get things right. Noah did everything just as God commanded him. All right, and now we see a new option for humanity. That even in the midst of violence and terribleness in the world, we have someone who is faithful, who is righteous, who is true, who is walking with God and does all the right things. This new hope. And then we see this flood come down. The flood says it flooded the whole land, the whole area. I understand that sometimes in our translations, older ones in particular, it talks about the entire world being filled, and we think of a globe. And maybe it's that. The language suggests that it's the land, this whole area is flooded. This chaotic water destroying what was, washing new for something different, a new hope. And then we have the story of a dove, which, as Mennonites, we love the peace dove. This dove going out trying to find a place after these 40 days. Oh, where will we go? Will we be able to find new land? This new hope coming about. And from the other side of the flood, here is what God says. I have set my rainbow in the clouds, and it will be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth, the whole land. So God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant I have established between me and all life on earth, not just God and Noah. This rainbow connection, reminding that, well, God has gone and tried rewashing and renewing everything, that God is committing to not do that again. And this is where we end the story for kids, right? It's a happy ending. Noah's out, him and his kids, they figure things out, and humankind moves on. But it's curious because Genesis continues the story. It says, Noah, a man of the soil, interesting phrase, proceeded to plant a vineyard. When he drank some of its wine, he became drunk and lay uncovered inside his tent. Okay, we're compressing here. Man of the soil, right? Humankind is this Adam, that's the human, is made out of the dam, the soil. But also, remember there was somebody else who was a man of the soil, and that's Cain, who will be going and planting things. This kind of suggests things are going poorly now. And then there's this vineyard planted, almost like this new garden again, but out of this garden, there is drunkenness. There is trying to escape. I don't know, is this trauma speaking for Noah, for whatever they've experienced, but he makes poor decisions here. And then the text is really strange at this point, and I'm not going to speculate on what's happening, but it is something shameful occurs. And it's shameful between Noah and one of his children, one of his sons. And it's weird, right? But we skip over this part because that's strange. And we're reminded of what God says to Cain, way back in Genesis 4, that sin is crouching at the door. Sin is crouching at your door. You must master it or it will overtake you. Even Noah, even this righteous one, even this one who's doing all the right things, sin crouches at his door, and we're right back to the same troubles. See, the trouble is that sin exists in the world. Sin not as just these decisions we make that miss the mark, not just us not being quite as good as we could be, but sin as this force that causes people to increase in violence, in corruption, in injustice, in harming each other and creation. It's almost like it's all around us, and it's also inside of us, that this sin somehow continues to exist in our hearts, even Noah's heart. That somehow the serpent has made its way to survive the flood. But not the serpent as the one going and tricking everyone, the serpent as the one who has already let this evil, this sin, somehow inside of us. The bad decisions, the harming of others, the brokenness of family that we see right in this passage and we see all around us. Because just like with Cain, just like with Noah, just like with every human being who came before us, we are reminded that sin crouches on our doorsteps. That the possibility of us being selfish and cruel and taking advantage of our neighbor is always there. The temptation to build ourselves up and push others down, to build a world that's for me and people like me and not for them who are different. Right on our doorsteps. See, friends, we need more than water. We need more than washing things away. We need more than that one-time baptism that we have as we commit saying to others that we're going to go and follow Jesus for the rest of our lives because we believe. This covenant we make, we need more than that because it has to go beyond the outside of us and make its way into our hearts. And the hope we have is that God looks at the world and God laments at the injustice and the pain. That God isn't distant and just letting everything occur at a distance, but that God is actively involved and actively watching and participating, and that God's heart breaks for the pain we as people continue to choose to make, to inflict on others, to inflict on ourselves. God laments at that. But even as God laments, God is one who continues to look to see the good. In a world where everything was broken and wrong, God looks and sees Noah as someone who is righteous, as someone that God can partner with and bring hope for others. God continues to look through a world with lament and brokenness and looking for those who God can partner with and bring about good in the midst of that. See, God doesn't call us just to believe something. God calls us to act on our beliefs, to participate with what God is doing to bring about that new creation and new hope. And God does not leave us to our own devices in a way that is very different that we don't see with Noah, but we see through the power of Jesus. We have the power of the Holy Spirit within us to change us from within. That baptism and following Jesus isn't about just cleansing our outside, it's cleansing our inside in such a way that out from us can spill the love of Jesus. So what does this mean for us today? We are reminded that we are called to serve here in our neighborhoods, in the world, but that we are not to be of the world, right? I live in Canada. I am a Canadian citizen, but my first identification as self isn't as Canadian, though I'm glad for the maple syrup and for our Canadian Thanksgiving, but that's not who I am. I'm a part of a different kind of country with a different kind of king, and I serve that king here. Because as we talk about the rain coming down, the sky falling, everything going wrong in Genesis, we are reminded that the sky is falling. That what is up and considered in this kingdom of heavens beyond us has come down to earth. That the king has come down to show us the way. so that we can go and be ambassadors for a different kind of kingdom. That means we serve here as these wayposts of heaven, spreading the news that, well, things are lamentable and bad, that God is bringing new hope, that peace is being made, that there is good news and reconciliation. Just like God is able to see the good and partner with those in those desperate, dark places, we are invited to do the same. To have God give us new eyes so we can see what Jesus is doing already all around us, to participate in that, and so that we can be the good, so that we can be the kindness of Jesus right here where we serve. We are invited to be a community that builds towards God's future. That will mean sometimes planting trees of hope, trees of love that we will never get to see fully bloom in our lifetime, but that we do our part and we trust that the good and great gardener will continue to go and to cultivate and bring out new life and hope, even beyond what we're able to see. We are invited to follow the Jesus way. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, through our lives and by our prayers, here in this place. That is the hope that starts in Genesis and that we still see today.